Okay, good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing today? Great. Okay, cool. It is cold, I agree. But we will get through it. So, today, we're going to be talking to you guys about the art of selling, right? So we are all professional salespeople, okay? And if you guys don't remember last time, me and her got married, but I had to let it go because she cheated on me. But it's okay, you know, you live and you learn. We're actually all back, and we're all working in the same company, right? Which is crazy, but it's fun. I like it. So, like I said, we're going to be talking to you guys about the art of selling and what it consists of. I myself am a sales student, and I'm in the professional sales program, so I've learned a lot throughout the process, and this is specific to engaging communication. Okay, so before we get started, we're going to play an activity. Okay, so what it is I have an object that I'm thinking of in my head, and we are going to go through every single person, and you're going to ask me a closed-ended question. Okay, so it could be anything you want, and if you don't know, closed-ended questions is basically yes or no, and you basically have to try to guess the object. Okay, does that make sense? Does everyone get it?
No.
Okay, cool. So if you want to say your name first, and then ask me the question, and then we'll start from east. Ask me a closed-ended question, whatever you want. So my answer is yes or no, about an object that I'm thinking of that's in the room. If you don't want to ask, just pass it on to the next person.
Okay, is it white?
Okay, let her go first.
Okay, is it white?
It is white.
Okay.
No, but you can't answer. I don't know. That's an open. That is a closed-ended question.
That is a closed.
You're right. All right.
Do you like coconut water?
Do I like coconut water?
Yeah. I guess I should just ask you if it's coconut water.
I haven't. I don't really drink coconut water, but
You should try this coconut water. It's so good.
Awesome.
Almost coconut water.
Great. Well, I'll buy it after. Go ahead.
Is it round?
It is round.
It's round and it's white.
So how's that? This is round one.
Is it clock?
Nope.
Well, it's still a good question though. Can you hold it?
Yes. And no.
Is it on the screen?
No.
No.
You want to ask a question? Okay. That?
Is it the light bulb?
No. It has to be quick. You just ask a question, yes or no, and then the next person. No.
Can you use it?
Yes.
Does it make sound?
Possibly.
What?
Is it small?
Yes.
Small white.
Does it fit in a bread box
Bread box?
or a microwave? It's
Yes.
one of the 24
Small white.
It is, yes.
Small.
Go ahead.
Is
I
it a
wonder if
watch?
it's her Apple
It's
Watch.
not a watch.
On her laptop.
Is it something you wear?
No.
Ooh, why don't we do that coffee?
No.
It's something that everybody has.
Yes.
Oh no.
You drink? No. Professor, do you want to put your input?
Is it something that's wet?
No.
So it's not like
Okay, so it is that, and I'm assuming that thing is an alarm system. Okay, this thing. If it's
That's cool.
it's round. It's round.
That's a square.
It's
square.
That's rounded edges.
Okay.
You're not wrong, bro.
That's okay. It is
It's
round.
kind of round, like.
Okay, let's get back.
It's
On this side, it's round.
Okay. So, the whole point of this exercise is asking closed-ended questions is good, right? Because you can get some information from the buyer if you are in a selling situation, but asking open-ended questions is going to give you more information that you could use to help you better understand that person, okay? So, next slide. My name is Kato, okay, and these are my team members. So,
My name is Clayton Hustilton.
My name is Tara again.
I'm Kenny J.
My name is Bong.
Alrighty, and like I said, we're all salespeople. We work in the same office, and I'm going to give you a brief presentation of the agenda, okay? And before I do that, you have to understand that setting the agenda is super important when you are engaging communication, no matter who it is, right? Because that way you are both on the same page and you have a mutual understanding. So, saying that, we are going to give a category debrief. We're going to show you a short video, okay? And we are going to talk about the 5 recommendations that we have today. And we are going to have an activity throughout, so you all have a handout with questions on them. And aside from that, if you have any other questions that you would like to ask during the presentation and you want to save them after, there's some white space on the handout, and you could put them on there. That way they're noted down. And then a summary, and finally a question answer. So does anyone have any questions? Does it make sense? And we understand what we're going to do today?
What does debrief category mean?
So,
Category debrief.
Yeah, so category debrief is going over the categories that we have chosen and what they mean in the sense of our 5 recommendations. Does that make sense?
You're going to see it on the next, later on.
Okay. Yeah, so 4 categories. The first one is pitch, okay? So in order to have an engaging communication, we must first have a clear objective. So this is basically saying why the recommendation is important, and putting it in regards of a pitch, it's like a sales pitch. You're not going to give the sales pitch if you don't understand your buyer and where they're coming from, right? Closing, so pitch leads to closing. So every deal's #1 goal is to obviously close. You want to make sure you close the deal. And how do you successfully do that is what closing is. So it's techniques that you could use to close the deal, or in regards of communication, engaged communication. And finally, easy sell and hard sell, effective techniques for successful engaging communication, and ineffective techniques for engaging communication. Do those make sense? I want to make sure you all understand them so you know what's going on during the recommendations. Okay, cool. So now we are going to show you a short video, and before we do that, have you guys seen Wolf of Wall Street?
Yes.
Seen it? Okay, awesome. I haven't even seen it. I should have, but I'll watch it later. Anyways, Jordan Belfort, who's very famous, and he was a broker. So he was really, really good at what he did, even though he actually was guilty, but he is now a very powerful communicator, motivational speaker, and all that sort of stuff. So, we're going to play the video.
Hello, Mr. Belfort. Thank you so much for being here. I have one question, and I'm a huge fan of your film, so this just comes quite naturally. Can you please sell me this pen?
You know, no one's ever asked me that before. It's the first time. So let me tell you what that whole exercise really stands for, right? So the whole sell me this pen narrative is really, it's a test that you give to a salesman to see if they really understand what selling's all about. If you ask someone who's not a professional salesman, who doesn't have the right instincts, they will start actually trying to sell you a pen. This pen is great. This pen writes upside down. It's the best value for its money. This pen will last forever. Here, buy this pen. Here's the thing. The only one rational thing you could do when someone says, sell me this pen, and that is to start asking them questions. So tell me, how long have you been in the market for a pen? What type of pens have you used in the past? Is it for business or personal? Typically when you buy a pen, what type of money do you spend on one? Do you buy expensive pen? The key to selling is to find out, step 1, what are your clients' needs, values, what pain are they looking to resolve, what do they need? And you're looking to fill that need at the most basic level, right? Well, when you just go out trying to sell something to someone, what you're saying is, I don't give a shit about you. I'm just trying to ram this down your throat, right? I want to know what you need. I want to know what you've done in the past. So you ask questions. If I ask someone, hey, so how long have you been in the market for a pen? They say, oh, I'm not looking for a pen. Great, have a nice day. I don't sell people the things that you aren't looking for. I wouldn't try to sell you a pen if you're not looking to buy a pen. So that's, and if someone said to me, I say, wow, this person really knows how to sell. Because the biggest mistake that rookie salesmen make is they try to sell to everybody. versus weeding out people who are not interested and only selling to those who are. So I ask questions, but not any question. I ask pointed questions to identify what type of pens you've used in the past, how much money you have. Now the pen is like a euphemism for any product, right? By doing that, I can get a good sense of what you're about, and then when I'm done asking my questions, and I know what I need to know, I'll say, well, based on what you said to me, this pen is the perfect fit. Let me tell you why. And now I'm actually matching my pen to what you need, and I tailor my presentation to fill that need, and it's much more elegant. Make sense?
Yes,
Okay,
thank
great.
you.
Okay, so thank you guys, and now Clayton is going to debrief the video and begin with our first recommendation.
All right, good evening, guys. So what y'all think about that video? Did it give you at least a different perspective on what it means to actually sell? You know, it's not focused on the product itself, but focused on the audience. And this is obviously, this is the real Jordan Belfort, not the actor in the movie, Wolf of Wall Street. He actually got in trouble with fraud on the stock market, and is actually a well-known author and motivational speaker now. So he was excellent at engaging communication, because he was able to take people who weren't even necessarily interested in buying stocks and sell them stocks, just based on talking to them. He wouldn't talk up the stock, talk about that. He just focused on the audience. What do they need? What are their emotions? How should I address to them? And that's basically what we want to talk about with our engaging communication, which leads us right into our first recommendation, which you want to identify with the audience. So to identify the audience, we'll first talk about our pitches, or some of why it's important, why this recommendation is important, what we want to achieve. And the first is to relate with the audience. Kind of goes without saying, if you relate with the audience, to understand the kind of issues they may be facing, and that way you can tailor your message and use life experiences you've had to connect with your listener. The next will be creating better engagement. When we're able to identify with the audience, it's able to get them a lot more engaged when we have that connection with them. Only the information really that directly relates to our own lives is what we'll find important and actually care about and be interested in hearing. So as a speaker, it also becomes more engaging on your end as it becomes easier to open up to the listener when you can tell that they are impacted by what you're saying. It makes it easier to share personal stories or talk about previous experiences you've had. And then the third pitch is to improve speech effectiveness. So if you're able to relate with the audience, create better engagement, you're ultimately going to have more effective speech. So improving the effectiveness, you're able to gain the trust of the listener so that they're comfortable enough to develop a connection with you and throughout your conversation. So now we'll talk about our closing, and this is actions that will help you achieve this recommendation. So things you should do to help identify with your audience, and that is be transparent. So an effective communicator is one who can open up about their own life so that the listener feels comfortable enough to examine their own. You can do this by revealing a fear, a hope, a weakness you may have. That will help develop some trust with the listener. And it's a great way to relate with your audience and attract them to identify with you. Kind of like Team 3 just got done talking about being transparent, or being authentic, I think it was y'all said. And that goes in the same way with this here. You want to be transparent with them, you want to be authentic, or else you're not going to grab their attention and grab that relationship with them. And next thing you want to do is take risks. Taking risks, it means going above and beyond the traditional ways of transferring information and engaging the audience by being real and revealing. It means opening up and becoming vulnerable to your listener. Sharing personal weaknesses can help the audience relate to you and even create some sympathy and understanding. And as a speaker, you want to open up as much as possible to your listener so that they feel that connection with you, but you do want to avoid causing the listener to feel sorry for you. You don't want to get to that point because then they'll get distracted from the message you're trying to tell them in the first place. Then our last closing is to use appropriate humor. And I stress the word appropriate here. We all know instances where humor's been overused way too often, inappropriate, and that's what you want to avoid. But having a good sense of humor is a great way to get the audience engaged and also provides a little bit of entertainment for your conversation. It makes it easier to explain difficult experiences and share personal stories once you've opened up and broke the ice with that listener. And then it's also a, yeah, that's what next slide, now we're going to talk about some of the easy sells and hard sells. So what are some of the effective ways to identify with your audience, and what are some things, ineffective techniques that'll make it hard to identify with your audience. So some of the first easy sell is put the people first. So how many of y'all, let me ask a question, how many of y'all have been at a meeting at work, or perhaps had a professor for one of your classes that was giving a lecture or presentation and clearly looked rehearsed, unenergetic, strictly like he'd done it before, probably spoke well, but just didn't seem like he really cared about y'all? Has anyone been in a meeting or had a class like that? Yeah, I know I have. I'd say a good portion of my professors over my life have been something like that. I mean, it's an obvious sign of poor engagement and communication. So they may be a good lecturer or a good public speaker, but that's not what the people want. They want that connection with the speaker. And like you saw in the audience with Jordan Belfort, he explained the first and most important key to selling is the potential buyer themselves, not the product itself. Our next easy sell is to impact the people. You want to have a focus on impacting the people. More concerned with the value you create for the listener rather than the impression you have on them. So we're not focused on trying to impress the listener. It comes easier to be real and authentic to them, which is what they really relate to. So it's all about leveraging the power of words and then delivering those words in such a way that influences and improves the people. And then our last easy sell is to focus on change. This begins with understanding the needs and wants of your listener and addressing them in a way that promotes change in your listener. Both knowledge and personal experiences can develop credibility with your audience, so they'll trust you and show them what value you will add to them when they can trust you and have that connection with you. So some of the hard sells, the techniques you want to avoid. So just like a good thing is to keep the people first, you want to avoid putting the message first. The message is only as good as the delivery. Just kind of the message is only as good as it relates to the audience. All our classes, we have lecturers up there talking about slides or whatever they're going over, and that's great, but we're not going to be interested in that or feel connected to that unless it has to do with our personal lives. And then the next is to impress the people. So you want to impact the people, you don't want to focus on impressing people. Impressing people, you're just focused on the image they have of you, so it's going to take away from the message you're trying to give. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable when trying to deliver that message. And then you want to avoid focusing on the content as well. You want to focus on change in your listener, not on your content. So focus on the content. I would assume throughout most of our professional careers or most of the classes we've learned growing up that teachers have taught us to be professional in our speeches, to be very professional, use appropriate grammar. They stress that our whole lives. But you actually want to focus on changing the audience. Focus on the content is only good to a certain point. You can have good content, but if you're not focused on how it will impact the listener, then it's no good at all. Go. Alright, so now we're going to take a little break here, a little water break, and I'm going to ask y'all to look at the question handout we gave to y'all. Does everyone have one with the 5 questions listed on it? Okay, we're going to take about a minute or so, however long y'all need, to go ahead and answer the first question.
If you guys need any help, we'll be here.
good for y'all to think about your presentations for this class or other classes you have. You know, what are ways you can identify with your audience for notes or even everyday conversation. The options are endless, you know. All right, we good? Everyone good? All right, do I have any volunteers who want to share their answer? Okay, go ahead.
So I put the people first and focus on change.
Focus on change and what was your name?
Christina.
Christina. So she said focus on change and put the people first. Those are very important to identify with your audience. All right. So now I'm going to pass it on to Glenn to talk about keeping your message simple.
Okay, so my recommendation would be keeping the message simple. The first from the pitch, you need to make complex information easy to understand. Sometimes, like let's take an example of classroom. You have textbook and professor. So would you rather go to professor because like you already have the textbook, so you can learn yourself at home. So what is the point of going to professor? Do you guys know any ideas? Any volunteers that you want?
The professor can explain it in an easier way.
What's your name again?
Jonathan?
Jonathan said professor can explain a lot easier in an easier way. So that's the main point. So the reason you're going to to classroom is professor usually he prep for coming to class and he make it things easier in a manageable chunks. That way you remember a lot quicker. That way you will remember things a lot quicker. And the next one is you have to keep attention. You have to keep your attention high. The way that you keep your attention high is like everywhere around, wherever you look at, like cell phones, social medias, all Snapchat, all those are visual representations. Whatever you're learning, the reason they have a lot of high attention span on those places is because they have visual. They also have, that's like they were training, they have visuals that they can look at and then it was easy to relate to. That's why a lot of people go to social media or Facebook, Snapchat to look at stuff. So in order to make your pitch easy to understand or have a high attention span, you need to have the visual representation on your pictures, on your slide too, and also the way that you avoid scope creep is like when you are giving out visual representation, don't give out too many pictures. Like for example, instance, like you giving out 4 or 5 pictures in one slide, it wouldn't be useful because like there's no point of looking at it, and also there's no emphasis that you are putting into it. And the next one is closing. Create one simple sentence. In the previous slides, they said about speak simple in a simple way. So the reason I'm bringing up this one is because there's all of you guys are English speakers. There's three forms of sentences: simple, complex, and compound. So a lot of times, like you can communicate someone effectively, a lot more effectively if you speak in a simple way than rather than using complex and compound sentences. So try using a simple sentence if you want to if you want to keep the message simple and provide one clear objective. The way that you make if you ask, for example, like you have a kid or you have siblings that's younger than you, if you ask them to do two tasks at the same times, would they be doing? They would not do them. They would not even listen to you because it was too hard for you to understand them. So you have to make it one clear objective for them so that they will be able to focus. They will be able to know like what is it that they have to do in a simple way with simple sentences. That way you would communicate better. And for the closing, the last one is minimize mental activities. The reason you provide one clear objective is you want to lower down, minimize the mental activities that's going on in the kid's mind. As long as you minimize them, they would perform the way that you want. So that's the point on this slides. And next slide, please. Easy sell. I told you about the simple, complex, compound sentences. Here in the simple languages, the reason I put up simple languages, I know it's a little bit redundant, but it's not redundant if you listen to it a little bit closer right now. if anyone's checking out right now, like zoning out, like please come and put back your attention back in. And I really want you guys to learn this simple language. For example, like you are teaching a kindergarten student, or you are teaching a like younger kids. You would be using a lot more simple languages. But if you are going to if you give the presentation in that for the kids in a fancy way, like using big words like like older people, high school students, or even the graduate students listening. If you give the speech that way, they will not understand them. So you have to make it simple. That way you can sell them, easy to sell. So that's the point. And provide only relevant information. The reason I'm bringing up this relevant information is like a lot of the time, like if someone asks, do you have breakfast? Sometimes like a lot of people give out extra information. I have breakfast. I have this. All extra follow-up questions. So that's not the you don't want to provide extensive information. That's like negative thing. You don't want to do that. You want to provide straightforward, direct message that you want them to remember, and then they can take action on. The last one, introduce details only when the audience has grasped the ideas. I mentioned you in the previous slides that you have to make information. You have to make whatever you're saying. You have to make it into manageable chunks. Whoever you're speaking to, so you need to know your audience. Just like Clayton said, you need to know your audience. So you have to focus on the audience too. While if you're trying to give out more information, only if they ask you, you give them. If they don't ask you, don't give them, because it's a bad idea. No one will appreciate it. And I also would like to reference the previous presentation in group 3. They said speak with conviction. The way that you make things simple or easy to understand. You need to have first conviction in yourself, and also you have to be authentic. If you are not authentic or it doesn't have conviction, it doesn't matter whatever good ideas it comes to your mind. It doesn't gonna be you will not be communicating with like effectively, like the way that people would understand. So that's a key point. I learned that on the previous group 3. It was really good. And then next slide is going to be our water breaks, and there's going to be slide. There's questions on question number two, and I will give you 90 seconds, I guess. If you guys need more times, I would like to give them. And yeah, that's it. We'll be walking around and then helping you guys out. Seconds to go, so a little bit hurry up, so we can go quicker. And then I really want you guys to learn, go to the next page and then learn a lot more quicker. And that way we have a lot of high attention spans. You know, as I was saying before, and we need to learn to congest and do stuff. So let's try to be a little bit quick. You guys still need times? We're good? So I'm going to ask, oh, someone's volunteering. Are you?
Yeah,
Okay. So what are 3 things to avoid when trying to keep the message simple? There's a hint part sale too, if you want.
Yeah, so fancy talk. I completely agree with what you're saying. You want to try to keep it simple, get your message across. And don't over-explain, because I feel like you can confuse people. So I really appreciated those 2 points.
What's your name again?
Jennifer.
Jennifer said, don't oversimplify, or don't over-explain stuff, and also don't use fancy words. So that's what she said. It's really helpful for her. So I really agree with her because I think that's really useful in our real life because many times we forget to use them. I'm going to give pass to Fadiz to explain his parts and then learn from him.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, guys, so now we're going to be talking about how to motivate your audience. You have to motivate your audience, right? No matter what you're doing, you're talking to your dad, your mom, brother, you have to motivate them so they can listen to you, okay? So, starting with the first aspect of the pitch, avoid mental filters. So what does that mean? This means you want to focus on the positives, okay? So when you're talking, I'm gonna put everything in a selling perspective just because that's what I'm used to. So if you're selling to a buyer, you want to understand where they're coming from, and once you do pitch, you want to make sure you're giving out the positives and directly correlate that to what it is that they needed in the first place. So don't put the negatives when you're speaking. Create a sense of urgency. So with that, you want to make sure you are ending it with terms to where there's a follow-up. So for example, if you are in a meeting, buyer, seller, when you're done with the meeting, you could ask them things like, okay, awesome, when would you like me to follow up with you? Or when will we have our next meeting? Or can you make a decision today? So make sure you're understanding them so that you could create a sense of urgency when you're speaking to them. And promote change. So what that means is promoting change is very powerful, right? So your audience does not know that they need to change. They don't know how or why they need to change. So you're going to promote that so they can understand and move on, right? So now closing, you want to cover the why before the what. So this is very simple. Basically, you want to make sure you understand your audience, friend, whatever it is that you're doing before you pitch whatever it is that you need to pitch. So that's exactly what that means. Cover the why before the what. Make sure you understand so you're not giving them something that they don't need or they don't care about, right? Create an incentive. This is very important. So what that means is it kind of ties to the create a sense of urgency. So give them an incentive before you leave and before you close the conversation or sell whatever it is. Appeal to their emotions. So make sure you understand your audience. A good example of this is building rapport. I don't know if I said that word right. So basically, hey, how are you doing? How's your day? Make sure you understand them, see where they're at. Maybe they've had a long day, they've had a short day, whatever it is, get an understanding of their emotions so you know how to approach the conversation. So next, easy sell. Make sure you're addressing the mind and emotions. So same thing, you want to make sure you are putting it in perspective that maybe if you're cold calling, for example, in a sell, right? Let them know that you are interruption to their day, right? Let them know in all areas why you're there, this and that. So just be very transparent and honest when you're talking to them. Great dilemma is basically creating a conflict. So if you're having a conversation or you're talking to someone, you have to create a dilemma. So this happens by if you are digging deep and asking them questions, eventually something will come up to where you could propose whatever idea you want to propose, okay? Teach people. This is just be very genuine, be very honest. No matter who you're talking to, your goal should be to teach them something, right? And that doesn't happen just off the bat, just try to teach someone something. No, gain some credibility, get to know them, let them get to know you, and teach them something, because that's valuable, and that relates to the quote that she said with Helen Keller. Can you remind me of the quote? It was a good quote.
It's Helen Keller learned that the most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched, but just felt in the heart.
Okay, see, I think that's beautiful, right? That could just be you talking to someone, this or that. Yeah, you guys get the point. So, have no energy. Make sure you have energy, you're pumped up. You know, if you don't have energy, they're going to throw you off, and it is not going to go well. Do not jump to conclusions, right? So, that, say you're talking to someone and you're just kind of getting to know them, give them time to answer, let them take their time, right? And finally, teach lessons. So same thing, and very close to teaching people. Okay, teaching lessons, sorry. So teach lessons is, you don't want to just off the bat just try to teach them lessons, right? You want to gain credibility, make sure you're on good terms, and then you could go about it. Okay, thank you guys, and now we will give you 1 minute, actually about 45 seconds just because we're running a little bit low on time, to answer question 3. And if you need any questions, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. Okay guys, are you guys good on time? Does anyone need more time, or you feel like you're good? Okay, awesome. Do I have any volunteers that would like to answer the question? Or a volunteer? Okay, so I'll go with you since you raised your hand first. What was your name?
I'm Joshua.
Joshua? Okay, nice to meet you. Go ahead.
So one way to motivate the audience is to invite them if they want to invest in this product. And afterwards you can commit them and then make a promise that whatever they're doing will provide a good benefit towards whatever they're going to be purchasing or committing themselves to. And afterwards follow up and see how they're doing a few days later. It's still a sale thing.
Yeah. Okay. Everyone heard that? I completely agree. The first point he made, invite them. That is super important, right? Yeah. So we're gonna move on to our next recommendation. Go ahead.
So I'll be teaching you guys how to tell a story. So my first pitch is to personalize the message. So you need to make the message your own. So how you do that? By telling your personal story so that the audience can understand the message that you're trying to tell them. The second pitch will be to explain complex idea. Like Ron said earlier, like when you're telling the story, you need to use simple language so that your audience understands like every single part of the story and they can relate to you. That way you get their attention. The second pitch would, the third pitch would be to connect with the audience. So my first pitch and the third pitch kind of relate to each other. So like once you tell your personal story, like you get your audience attention, like you